Hi, and welcome to Terrifics Comics and Pop Culture. This is Chuck, and I'm really glad to have you here. Today we're going to be looking at comic magazines for the comics part of this station. And I love comic magazines. They're unique. They're hard to find. People don't know much about them. In other words, they're right in my wheelhouse. And as people say, well, they're weird to collect. So in other words, they're perfect for me. Now, you may not know too much about collecting comics magazines because, quite frankly, if you walk into your local comic store, you're probably not going to find any of them. Or if you do, it's going to be something super, super pricey up on the wall that there's no way you're going to be able to buy short of taking out a mortgage. In other words, it's going to be the first Star-Lord, it's going to be the first Rocket Raccoon, or maybe the origin of the Punisher. And after that, probably not. Which is a really shame because there's lots of great stuff out there. Now, I will say the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles runs are sort of considered magazine-sized books, so they count too. But since I don't have a huge bank account and I'm not an obsessive Turtle fan, you're not going to see any of those on this channel. You are going to see an early Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle appearance today, but not necessarily those books. Same thing is true with the magazines. You know, a lot of the magazine-sized stuff you just don't see people going that crazy about. Now, I've got a Golden Age haul that I'm going to show at some point with a bunch of Mads, and there's one magazine-sized book in there, so you will see an example of that. But Mad, I sort of consider to be something a little different. So, now the books I'm going to show today have come from a variety of different sources. Some are from my local comic book shop, some are from online auctions, and some are just things I just sort of stumbled across in various and sundry places. Now, I'm very fortunate that my LCS owner, my LCS, which is Foundation's Edge in Raleigh, has been around a really long time. And if you go in there, first of all, if you're OCD, you're going to have an absolute nutter breakdown because Rick has boxes everywhere. And what he still has, though, are magazine boxes. And you're not going to find those in a lot of the newer LCSs. Or people even who have stopped selling back issues for the most part. So it's really cool to be able to find these things. So like I said, some of these have come from Rick's, some of them have come from online, and some of them I just sort of picked up in various and sundry other places. So let's see what we have. Now, in future installments of this, by the way, I'm going to show off some complete series that I have and some key books within those series. So this is not the only time I'm going to talk about magazines. And I like picking them up whenever I can and whenever we sort of fill holes and whatnot. So let's get started. So the first thing we have here is Justice Machine #1 from Noble Comics. And this is from the early 1980s. I'm going to say 1981. Now, who's the Justice Machine, you're asking? Which is a very good question. And quite honestly, I was asking it too when I looked at this. And it wasn't until the fact that my LCS owner pointed out that when the Justice Machine gets another series, and this again is probably 84, 85, and I had just got back into collecting about 84, 85, but I wasn't really spending much time in comic book shops. And when I was looking for my Marvel books and my 2 DC books I was collecting, which were Justice League and Fury of Firestorm. But I wasn't really looking at anything else. But that if you get the next series of Justice Machine, and you get the annual, that has the first appearance of Bill Willingham's The Elementals. And that's the series that got Bill Willingham really going in comics. And of course, today Willingham is known for primarily Fables, which is one of my favorite series of all time. This book here has a John Byrne cover on it, or excuse me, it's not a John Byrne cover, sorry. But it is signed by the cover person, whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce, but there is a signature here. Again, that's great. I just thought it was a neat book. Secondly, we have one of the great series from independent comics from the 1980s, Love and Rockets. And I absolutely love these covers. Now, I don't have a lot of Love and Rockets books, but this is a first print of #5. It's done by the Hernandezes, and as you can see here, it's got a great style to it. And of course, for a long time when people talked about diversity in comics, this is one of the first really successful series done by Hispanic creators. And it's a really crazy series. It ran about 50 issues or so for the first run, and there's just some really neat stuff in there. You can see here again, the back cover artwork. The interiors are black and white. And it's a really neat series. Now, I don't have a lot of them. I have this one. I have a number 3. I think I have a couple of others. A true story, when I was in college in the early 90s, I had a girlfriend who was an art major, and she really liked Love and Rockets, and really liked specifically, there's an issue, I think it's 29 or 30, with a rooster on the cover. So, of course, being a good boyfriend, I went and purchased that for her and gave it to her. And, I'm really curious to find out if she still has it or not. We've kind of lost touch, but I hope she still has it. So, I still have the book she gave me. So, but that's for a different presentation. All right. We have here from Kitchen Sink Enterprises, The Spirit number 19. These are mostly reprints of Will Eisner Spirit stories. However, you can't go wrong with them. So the series ran for nearly 40 issues. Lots of great stuff here. As you see, I only got it for $3. Really, I got it for less than that. I picked it up as a con. And it's gorgeous Will Eisner artwork. Right, do we have to say anything more? Okay, well, we might. If you don't know who the Spirit is, this is Will Eisner, superhero creation. Ran for a long time in the newspaper strips. Really did a lot of innovative graphic work and whatnot. And appeared in a lot of comics at the same time. And if you're not familiar with him, go over to archive.org, pull up the Smithsonian collection of comic book art, and in there you'll see some reprints of some of the classic Spirit stories. And trust me, you won't regret it. So, all right, we have a fanzine here from Canada, and it cost $1, which I'm sure will be a little bit more than that now. And it focuses on Frank Frazetta and Frank Frazetta's artwork. And again, Frazetta, as many of you all know, you might know, is a very well-known horror artist. Did a lot of great horror art, especially for DC. And this is just a really cool fanzine. And I picked it up at my local comic store. I thought it would just be kind of neat. It's amazing. This is from 1970. And, you almost see a little riff here where they talk about Jim Stronenko and everything being alive and well. It almost reminds me of the theory about whether or not Paul was dead or not with the Beatles. And yes, I am now dating myself by saying that. Thankfully, for some of the rest of us, there is Google search where you can find out about that and that wonderful conspiracy theory back in the day, which, by the way, I was not old enough actually to partake in. So, but I know about it. I promised a book with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in it. And here we go. This is Fugitoid, number 1. They have an appearance near the end of it. It's probably the only early Turtles appearance I could get and afford at the same time, given the crazy prices for a lot of these now. And as you can tell from the condition of the board here, this has sat in the back issue bin for a long, long time. To the point that my store owner completely forgot he even had it, which is neat. So it's a kind of a fun book. Again, I'm not a big Turtles guy, but, it's still kind of neat. It's one of the few early Turtles appearances I have. The other one of those being Grimjack. Their appearance in Grimjack, I think it's 28 or 24, somewhere around there. They appear in a backup story. And next up, we have some British comics here. Most of these British comics, kind of like this one here, the superheroes, are mostly reprint collections. And one thing you may notice about them is how really skinny they are. And we can kind of show it to you here. They were not printed on the best paper in the world, and most of them were weekly books, if anything like that. And they consisted mostly of reprints, as you can see here. And again, it's a really, really flimsy paper. It's really, really thin. They are not the most sturdy of books in the world. And as you can see, most of them, pull it up here, are black and white reprints. So, but it's still kind of cool to have. It's very hard to find these in higher grade because, again, as you can probably guess, they get damaged really, really easily. I scooped this up because I thought it was going to have either a reprint with the cat here or with the Scarecrow, who I think now is called the Straw Man. He's one of those great woulda shoulda characters from Bronze Age Marvel who tried to appear in a bunch of different places, and I think every time he was going to appear in a series, it got canceled, short of his Marvel Spotlight appearance and later on his appearance in 2-in-1. He's a fun guy to pick up stuff on if you want to go chasing after an obscure character. Another example of a British weekly here is an Empire Strikes Back weekly, again, where they're reprinting a lot of Star Wars stuff. Really kind of cool here to get this. Really awesome art here on the front. And just, it was a $5 pickup. So for a $5 pickup, it was wonderful. Also, at the same time, LCS, they had 2 issues of the series that am interested in collecting, understanding, of course, that I am not going to be able to pick up the entire run anytime soon, partially because they're really hard to find in the States. And that's one thing with the British comics. They're really hard to find here. This is a series called Daredevils, and it ran 11 issues. And as you can imagine, of course, one of the main series they're reprinting is, well, Daredevil. But the bigger thing about it is that it had a Captain Britain backup story, or main story, I guess, depending on what you were buying it for, done by Alan Moore, which has been reprinted, I think, like once or twice. So very, very infrequently is it reprinted. And that makes these sort of especially valuable and hard to find. This is number 10 here. And I have number 11, which is really cool. Now, the really valuable ones here to pick up are 6 and 7, because they had the first appearance or the first reference to Marvel continuity or the official Marvel Universe as 616 there. But trying to find those online for anything outside of crazy prices is nearly impossible. So just be aware. In terms of other reprint series or other series, I got from my guys online at JNS Comics, not the entire run, but close to it, of the Marvel magazine of Blake 7. And for people who are fans of 1970 sci-fi, and you should probably figure out this is 1970 sci-fi, it looks like they were shopping from the same wardrobe people as Battlestar Galactica at the time. Blake 7 was a very, very popular series for a lot of sci-fi geeks and everything. It's one which has not been rebooted or recontinued, and if you're familiar with Blake 7, you know why. I'm not going to bother spoiling a nearly 40-year-old series at this point, but again, the Google is your friend. So really neat here. I don't have the entire run. I have those, and then I have some more in here. And again, these are these flimsy British magazines, but I got them in a larger batch from JNS Comics on eBay. So great guys to deal with. Been buying stuff from them for years. It really helped me build up a lot of especially my Gold Key stuff. So I love them for that. Finally, I've got some RPG books, which are a little different. I'm not generally an RPG guy, role-playing guide for people who are not into the vernacular. My kids were here. They can tell you all about it. But I did pick up some things from the short-lived DC Heroes series. DC and Marvel both had their own RPG games in the 80s and the early 90s. Marvel tended to be better, I guess more popular. It seemed less confusing when it was put in front of me. But we picked up 2 of the guides at my LCS. This is a guide to DC Magic. It's got an absolutely gorgeous cover on there with the Spectre and Deadman. It really is amazing. That's reason enough right there for me to pick it up. I am a huge Spectre fan, and so anything that has the Spectre on it, I'm willing to take a stab at. And they are a lot of fun. Now, I'm not completely beholden to the Spectre. There are some things with the Spectre which I do not pick up, but they are very, very few. My reason for picking this up, though, had much more to do with a movie that was coming out very soon. We have our friend Morpheus and the Sandman. Again, I doubt the Sandman fans are going to go absolutely nuts over it, but I will tell you that the Sandman fan base is really, really rabid and loves all their Sandman stuff, so that wouldn't surprise me. And finally, we have the hardware handbook from DC Heroes. Again, a lot of the stuff is not really worth a lot. This has clearly been read some. It was a really neat read. There's some good George Perez artwork in there, especially when talking about the new Titans, with Teen Titans and everything. There's a whole section there on Batman and trying to explain away all of Batman's gadgets. Again, this kind of, to me, takes away some of the fun of comics. When you try to explain things, it gets a little hard. But this is really neat. Don't sleep on these module books. There are sometimes really interesting stuff in there, which is in canon or an attempt to explain away canon. I know there's a module for the Watchmen, apparently, that some people consider to be very valuable because it gives a lot more backstory on those characters, which for a long time we didn't have. And then we had before Watchmen, and right, the less said about that, the better. Especially since we don't want Alan Moore firebombing us in the comments. So, anyways. So that's the stuff for today. I'm really, really glad you came here. Just some really fun stuff. And trying to focus on some things which you don't normally see on YouTube. Some collectible things you don't see there. Now, that's not to say on later pickup videos and whatnot, you're not going to see some of the same 10 books that everybody else is trying to get because, well, I do live in this culture after all. But I think you will hopefully see more and different things. We'll also take some time, hopefully, to talk about some other topics like animation and comic strips and things like that. So, thank you so much for coming here. Please subscribe if you like this content. If you like seeing me here, that's great. And give me a like, a thumbs up, and leave some comments. Until we meet again, take care. Bye-bye.